Okay, so the reason for this video is that in the past few weeks and maybe even months, I've been seeing around in Instagram and LinkedIn a lot of posts by fashion designers that are using a new AI tool that is called NewArc. And I am a curious person. I'm interested in technology, especially when technology can improve my work. But I'm also a bit skeptical about AI tools, particularly about generative AI. And so I decided to look into this tool and see if it actually lives up to the hype. And if you're wondering if this is another episode of I'm going to rant about AI, who knows? Let's figure it out together. I'm here on NewArc's page, and here it says that it's a tool to turn your drawings into images in seconds. Technically, a drawing is already an image, but okay. It says here that it's an AI sketch to image generator. So you put your own drawings and it creates a photorealistic image of said drawing. And here it says that it turns sketches into 3D renders, which I think is a bit misleading because this is not a 3D render, it's not a 3D object. Then we see some really nice examples and the brands that are using this super innovative tool. And here are the steps to get the result. So you input an initial sketch, you write a prompt explaining what that sketch is, and the software generates a photorealistic image based on that sketch. And here explains how cool it is and how you could be using it. Like, look, you could be doing a rip-off of the Guggenheim Museum, but you're still there rotting on your sofa. So here are more user stories, reviews, and here are some highlights of the features, and some of them are interesting. Like, for example, here, speeding up your workflow, no more manual drawing because it's so tedious to be creative. Why would I want to learn an actual skill? Here, no technical knowledge required, and you can show your clients an image of the future product, which makes me wonder, if you have no technical knowledge, how are you going to create that future product? Because if you're not a fashion designer, you might end up designing something with this tool that isn't actually possible to be manufactured. And here it mentions again the 3D renderings, which is something that makes me a bit angry because a lot of the marketing of this tool is trying to convince people that these images are a 3D render, that this tool gets you the same results as a 3D design tool like Close3D, but that's not the case. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. And these two here, the one about creating 100% unique designs and having full copyright ownership, are actually a bit funny, and you will see why a bit later. Okay, let's take a look at some examples in NewArc Instagram. Here, there's a roundup of several user creations. So let's see how are these images that NewArc generates. For example, this one, we have here the sketch. I wouldn't say the sketch is super clear, but it seems like there's a dress form, then there's some kind of jacket, and here it's like a bustier kind of top and a pair of white palazzo pants at the bottom. We don't see the bustier part. I think the software didn't really understand what was going on. The buttons and the buttonholes are very different. All this part makes no sense. And here you don't really see where the pants start and the jacket ends. And there are also these hanging loops there that I think come from the pleats, the lines that mark the pleats. So I would say it's not really possible to make this garment. And let's see what else is there. So this one, I have noticed that by seeing what other designers are doing and posting on LinkedIn, that this software has a real problem with zippers. So they look all a bit weird and they don't look symmetrical. There's also kind of a logo here, and also here they don't have anything to do one with the other. I think my favorite in this one are the drawstrings that appear out of nowhere, because I think the eyelets are up here and the drawstrings are like inserted into the fabric. And here I don't really know what's happening. I don't know, like this white part, like is it part of the jacket, is it part of the helmet? I have a lot of questions, and I also don't really know how this jacket is closed. Like I'm guessing there's a zipper underneath this placket, but it seems like the placket is attached at both sides. So let's see what else. This is very interesting because what on earth is this? Like, I'm guessing it's because the original sketch was showing the front and the back in a separate sketch. So it didn't do a good job here. And also I think something similar is happening here. Like, I'm guessing this is the back of this panty, but they make absolutely no sense together. Also, this panty has a lot of problems. Like, for example, there's this weird hanging piece, like the lace is not actually attached. And here, this binding, it seems like it comes up and attaches to the back, not to the front of the garment. And in this side, it seems like it's a bit better, like it seems attached to the front waistline. So good luck getting into these panties. And also here, like again, the zippers are not the best feature of this software, and all this finishing, it's also looking quite weird. I'm guessing that's because it had a scalloped edge on the sketch, like to resemble the lace, but it didn't interpret the thing correctly. And on these two, we find similar issues. Like, for example, this one, it's not symmetric. Like, this part that comes from the back to the front, it's not the same in both sides. In the one on the top, we also see that this elastic situation, it's not looking well. The elastic seems to be like appearing in and out of the garment, so it's not really clear how it's attached or how it should be attached. So pretty much unusable. And this is interesting because here the AI improvised, and I'm not mad about the result. Like, it looks good, but if you wanted it to make what you have drawn, then you have a problem. Also, like again, like the other ones, you have like this finishing here, the hem that appears and disappears, and also the buttons are placed very unevenly. Like, these two are wider than the rest, and there's like a single one down there doing its thing. And I also wanted to show another one with a model, like you can create your sketch so that it interprets that it's on a body. So first of all, you have these lovely AI generated hands that may or may not end up in your nightmares. And again, we have the same problems, like the inconsistency on the seam. Like, where is this sleeve attached? Like, I don't see the seam here. And here, this is interesting because it has a decorative edge, and in the other side, we don't see that. And again, it's quite difficult to know, like, where is the structure of the garment. And of course, it doesn't look at all like the original sketch. So yeah, I think this is a good overview of what NewArc AI has to offer. And something that I saw before that got my attention was this reel about incorporating 3D design into your work. And it's very interesting, like visualization and test different colors and materials and present your vision and sustainability and whatever. These are real benefits from 3D design. The only thing is that NewArc is not 3D design. And my main question is it actually useful? I would say it depends, because NewArc sells itself as a tool for quick visualization, and I think that's more or less true, but with a couple of considerations. First, I would probably remove the quick out of the equation, because NewArc only works if you have already made a sketch and then you put into the software, and then you have to write a prompt to get what you want to get. And that prompt can get a few times to refine so that you can get something that is actually usable. So that's why I don't think it's that quick. And as for the part of the visualization, you are indeed visualizing something, but I would say that it works if you lower your quality standards, because a lot of the images that we've seen, they are not perfect, they don't have all the details, and they are actually less useful than a clear technical sketch, because in a technical sketch, you can have all your top stitching, all your zippers, all your pockets, all your seams very clearly marked. So the garment itself is way easier to understand than with an image that is seemingly real, but if you look closely, a lot of things don't make sense, or it's missing a lot of details, or it's even inventing other details that weren't in the original sketch. So yes, you can visualize something, but maybe it's not what you wanted to visualize. And then I also ask myself, for what purpose are you going to use those images? What is their end use for fashion designers? Like in NewArc's website, they say that you can use those renders to sell a product to hypothetical buyers, but usually your job as a fashion designer is not to sell the product, but rather to make the customer understand the product, and especially to communicate with the factory to transform that product idea into a tangible product, ideally with the least amount of revisions and sample rounds. So from a designer's perspective, I have seen some designers supporting the idea of using these images in tech packs. And this is something that I honestly have a bit of trouble understanding how they can be useful in this use case, because the point of a tech pack is to explain to the factory as clearly as possible and with as much detail as possible how to make that garment. And that's also why it's so important for tech packs to deliver them with CAD sketches, with technical sketches that are very clear and very detailed, and they don't leave room for confusion. And that's where I think the problem lies, because as we have seen, those images that you generate with NewArc or similar tools, they aren't always super detailed, and sometimes the AI invents details that weren't there. So if you are including those images aside from your CAD sketches, it can potentially lead to more confusion. So unless both the generated image and your CAD sketch are exactly the same, I think it could lead to more misunderstandings instead. So that's why I don't see the point in using these AI generated images into TechPack, because I think that aside from creating confusion, they are adding an extra step. And also there are other tools that can add some details about the construction of the garment or the details of the garment that do the job much better. And that tool that I have in mind is 3D design. So speaking of 3D design, how does NewArc and tools like that compare to 3D design? Because from what I've seen in NewArc's website, they are trying really hard to be an alternative to 3D. They actually made a reel on their Instagram saying that what they do is 3D design. I respectfully disagree, but let's see if they actually can be compared. 3D tools like Close3D, which is the software that I use, work pretty differently from AI. In a fashion 3D software, you create your garment, but by putting together all the different pieces, all the different pattern pieces, in the same way as if you would be doing it in real life, but just translated into the digital space. That pattern that you're using to put together your garment may have been created by you or may have been created by a pattern maker, and you can import it into the whatever software you are using, like Glow, Browseware, or Style3D. And once you have constructed your garment, you can simulate it on an avatar with the size that you are going to use in your final end customer. And the most interesting thing about that is that once you have it simulated, you can adjust the fit in real time, and you can even try different style lines, making changes to that pattern, changing the colors, changing the fabrics, and seeing how that affects the design in a way that is accurate and realistic. And then at the end of that process, you can make a render. And a render in 3D is like taking a picture of your 3D garment, and you can use that for marketing, for your website, for presenting that to potential buyers or customers or investors. So this final part, this image, this picture, is what is comparable to what NewArc gives you. NewArc gives you the last part of that process, but it doesn't give you all the previous steps. And that's the problem, because the point of using 3D in the product development process in a fashion brand is not to have a nice image at the end, but it's about trying to fit the pattern and identifying problem areas or trying different fabrics and colors before you get to a physical sample. It's a way of saving you time and money by reducing the amount of physical samples that you're going to make with your manufacturer. And then on top of that, you have the addition of the renders that you can create or the animations and use that as marketing materials areas or in whichever way you want. And these renders represent your product very accurately because they are made with the same patterns and with fabrics that have similar physical properties as to the real fabrics that you are using. So whatever you see in these images, the fit, the fabrics, the details, the construction is according to your actual garment. It's not an invention of an AI algorithm. And you can also integrate in a way that is much more seamless into your own product development workflow because it's made for that. In contrast, the value of this kind of AI tools is basically zero, or I would even say that it's negative because it's an extra step that it doesn't add anything else. You're spending time and potentially money because NewArc is not free into something that doesn't really add value to your product or your workflow. And also it comes with a whole series of issues that we are going to talk about next. So aside from the usability or not of these AI tools, there are also two other main points that for me are very important, and these are actually the main reasons why I have a critical view of most generative AI tools. First, there's the issue of copyright. And if we look back at NewArc's website, there were these two features that mention that your designs are 100% original and you own the copyright of them. Now, I don't know what is the database, the dataset that NewArc AI has used to train its software. I know that in the website, the founders talk about stable diffusion, but they don't make it clear if they had based their own tool in that. But at this point, it's already common knowledge that all of the big datasets that have been used to train generative AI software, including Stable Diffusion and OpenAI and all that, contain copyrighted content that has been used without permission or compensation to the authors. And this is so common knowledge that OpenAI admitted that publicly. So if NewArc's AI was trained in any of those datasets, there's a real chance of your 100% original designs being a rip-off of someone else's. The technology that has made them possible has probably been trained with images from artists and creators and maybe from regular people, maybe your last holiday picture that you posted online, without giving the option to opt out, to oppose to this. And because of that, the copyright ownership of whatever you create with AI is not that clear. I'm not a copyright expert, but there are a lot of resources online about this topic. I'm going to link a few, and I also talked about this in my other video, the one about Mango's AI-generated campaign. I'm just gonna say that you should be very careful when using generative AI to create designs or any type of content because you may run into copyright issues. There's, for example, Getty Images, that is a very big agency for stock photography that is suing Stability AI for copyright infringement because they have used their images to train the AI. And there are also several artists that are suing some of these big AI companies. And on top of that, and this is something I also mentioned in the other video, there's the sustainability issue because generative AI is a technology that wastes enormous amount of water and energy in such a great scale that in some places where they have placed these server centers, the data centers, they are considering building more electric plants because they can keep up with the demand. And the people who live nearby are suffering the consequences in the form of higher prices for electricity and water and even water shortages. For example, for ChatGPT, it's estimated that the amount of water that is wasted every time that you have a conversation, it's around 1 liter. So every time we ask ChatGPT some life-changing question like, what should I eat for dinner? We are actually contributing to making the world a worse place for everyone. So we've come to the end at last, and my conclusion about NewArc AI is that for me it's hard to see any real value from using it, especially when we have tools like 3D design, like Clone 3D, that already do the job and so much more in a way that effectively benefits the production process. And in general, my whole stance about using generative AI tools has a lot to do with those issues about sustainability and copyright that we talked about earlier. By asking NewArc or Midjourney or any of those AI generators to create a pretty picture, we are contributing to something that I believe is a big problem. Me as a creative person or just a rational human being, I feel disgusted about supporting a technology that is essentially built on theft, on using hundreds of millions of images without permission to train a software that is not designed to support creatives or to democratize art or whatever the marketing jargon they want to use, but its main goal is to enrich the already rich people who created it. And I think it's very important before we adopt a technology to actually get informed about how it works and what consequences does it have. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments and let's see each other in the next video, hopefully with a much nicer topic.